I found the wardrobe in a place it didn't belong. It wasn't mine. It wasn't anyone's, really. It just appeared. That morning, sunlight slipped through my curtains, touching the old wooden floor of my apartment, the same way it did every other day. But something was different. I remember standing still, staring at the far corner of my bedroom where the wall used to be bare. Now there was a wardrobe, tall, wooden, carved with unfamiliar symbols. Its surface shimmered faintly, as if the wood itself was breathing. At first, I thought I was imagining it. I even rubbed my eyes, laughed under my breath, and said, maybe I'm dreaming again. But the cold air leaking from its edges told me otherwise. Curiosity pulled me closer. Each step made the floor creak, and with every sound, my chest tightened. The air near the wardrobe felt colder, heavier, like I had stepped into someone else's memory. There was a faint hum, almost imperceptible. It wasn't mechanical, it was alive.
I reached out, brushing my fingertips against the surface. It pulsed softly, like the heartbeat of something ancient. And that's when I heard it. A whisper, low, distant, coming from the other side of the door. It said only one word, "Come." I froze. Every instinct told me to step back, but something in that voice felt familiar, like I'd heard it once, long ago, in a dream I could never quite remember. I pressed my ear against the door. Silence. Then, without warning, the wardrobe creaked open.
A sliver of light spilled out, soft, silver, and endless. It wasn't the light of any lamp or sun. It was the kind of light that didn't illuminate, it revealed. And what I saw beyond it wasn't clothes. It was a corridor. A corridor lined with doors, each one identical to mine. And at the end of that corridor, barely visible through the glow, was a figure standing still, facing me. And for a fleeting second, I thought it looked exactly like me. That was the moment I realized this wasn't a wardrobe. It was a passage, a memory, a mirror, or maybe something in between.
I don't remember deciding to step inside. One moment I was staring at the figure in the distance, and the next, my hand was already on the doorframe, my foot crossing the threshold. The air changed immediately. It wasn't cold anymore. It was weightless, suspended, like I was standing underwater but could still breathe. The silver light wrapped around everything, soft and quiet, humming like a distant melody. Behind me, the wardrobe door creaked and shut on its own. The sound echoed, long and hollow, as if the walls themselves were remembering it. The corridor stretched endlessly ahead, lined with identical doors on both sides. Each one had a small brass nameplate, blank except for faint scratches that looked almost like letters worn away by time. I called out, "Hello!" The sound didn't carry far. It was swallowed instantly, as though the air didn't like voices here. Still, somewhere deeper in the corridor, I heard footsteps.
Not echoes, actual footsteps. Slow, careful, moving closer. I froze, watching the far end of the hall. The figure was still there, unmoving, half absorbed in the glow. I squinted, trying to make out the details of its face. Then I realized it wasn't one figure, it was many. Dozens of silhouettes, faint and flickering, standing behind each door as if waiting for something. When I turned back, I noticed one of the doors on my right was slightly ajar. Curiosity took over. I reached for the handle and pushed it open. Inside was a room. My room. Exactly as I had left it this morning. The unmade bed, the coffee mug on the desk, the small crack in the window frame. Every detail was perfect, except one. There was someone sitting on the bed. Someone who looked exactly like me. He was staring at the floor, breathing slowly, whispering something under his breath. I took a step forward, and the floor groaned softly. He looked up, and our eyes met. For a moment, everything stopped. His expression wasn't surprised. It was tired, like he had been waiting for me. He smiled faintly and said, "You came back sooner this time." My throat went dry. "What do you mean, this time?" He stood up, walking toward me, and the light from the corridor cast his shadow across the floor. But his shadow didn't move the way his body did. It moved a second too late.
He stopped in front of me, inches away, and whispered, "You shouldn't have opened the door. Every time you do, we trade something." Before I could ask what that meant, he raised his hand and pressed it against my chest, and I felt the world tilt. The corridor rippled like water, and everything around me began to dissolve. When the light faded, I was standing alone again. The door was closed, the corridor silent, but I could still feel the warmth of his hand on my chest, faintly pulsing as if something was now beating inside me that hadn't been there before. And somewhere behind one of those doors, I heard my own voice whisper, "Don't keep walking." I should have turned back. I should have stopped right there and forced the wardrobe open again. But instead, I kept walking. The corridor felt longer now, wider somehow. The silver glow dimmed into something deeper, more like the shimmer of moonlight through fog. The air was thicker too, filled with faint sounds, soft and irregular. Whispers, maybe. They didn't sound threatening, more like fragments of conversations stretched thin across time. I reached another door, this one slightly cracked
with a faint light flickering underneath. I hesitated, remembering what happened last time, but curiosity has its own kind of gravity. It pulls you forward, even when you know you shouldn't move. The handle was cold when I touched it. I pushed the door open. At first, I thought the room was empty. Then, I saw the mirrors.
Hundreds of them, different shapes, different sizes, covering every inch of the walls, the ceiling, even the floor. Some were cracked, others fogged, but all of them reflected me from impossible angles. I stepped inside, and the door closed quietly behind me. The reflections didn't move in sync. Each version of me blinked at different times, breathed differently, stood at different angles. One of them smiled, another frowned. One even looked afraid. I whispered, "What is this place?" The reflections whispered back, not in unison, but like a wave of broken echoes rippling through glass. And then from the farthest mirror, one reflection stepped forward. It didn't stop at the surface, it stepped out. The sound was like ice cracking. It looked exactly like me, but older, maybe by a few years. His eyes were heavy, the kind that had seen too much. He said softly, "You're getting closer."
Closer to what? I asked. To the truth, he replied, glancing at the mirrors. Every version of you leaves a trace. You've been here before. In your dreams, your fears, your choices. You keep walking this corridor again and again. I shook my head. That's not possible. It doesn't matter if it's possible. It's happening. The other reflections started moving, hundreds of me, shifting in rhythm, turning their heads slowly toward us. The sound of glass humming filled the room, deep and resonant. The older version of me leaned closer and whispered, "The wardrobe isn't a place. It's a mirror that remembers." Before I could react, the mirrors started to crack, one by one, splintering until the sound was unbearable. I covered my ears and shut my eyes. When I opened them again, I was standing back in the corridor.
The mirrors were gone. The door was gone. But my reflection, it was still standing in front of me. Not inside any glass, just there in the open air, watching. And then it turned around and began walking deeper into the corridor. Without thinking, I followed.
The corridor bent slightly, curving in a way that made it impossible to see what lay ahead. As I followed the other version of myself, the one who had stepped from the mirror, I noticed the air changing again. The faint metallic scent faded, replaced by something softer. Rain, old paper, and the faint, comforting smell of coffee. The kind of scent that pulls at memories you can't quite place. I turned a corner, and the space opened into a vast hall, a cathedral of time. Rows of wooden doors lined each wall, stretching into a hazy distance. Each one had a brass plaque engraved with a date. Some I recognized: birthdays, anniversaries, days I'd rather forget. The other me walked straight to one of them, the one marked October 18, 2014. He placed his hand on the door. I hesitated. "What's that day?" He didn't answer. He just opened it.
Inside was a room bathed in amber light. A younger version of me sat at a kitchen table, head in his hands. A clock ticked loudly on the wall. Rain streaked the window. And across the table, an empty chair. It hit me then. That was the day she left. Her voice echoed faintly in my mind, the last thing she said before closing the door. "You keep dreaming instead of living." I watched silently as my younger self whispered something under his breath. Then he looked up, directly at me. His eyes widened. "Are you real?" I stepped back, startled. "Do you can see me?" He nodded slowly. "You shouldn't be here. You're supposed to forget." The walls of the room began to ripple, as if reality itself was turning liquid. Photographs on the walls melted into colors. The furniture flickered between forms. The older version of me, the one who had guided me here, spoke quietly. "This place holds what you buried. Every regret, every choice you tried to undo. You've been building this wardrobe for years." I asked, "Why show me this?" He replied, "So you'll finally understand what it means to open it." Before I could respond, the younger me stood up, walked to the window, and pressed his hand against the glass. He asked, "Do you hear that?" At first, I didn't. Then I did, a low, distant hum, like wind moving through hollow spaces. The wardrobe. It was calling. The light dimmed, and everything began to blur. The table, the walls, the rain. The last thing I saw before it all dissolved was the reflection of 3 versions of myself standing in the same room at different ages, all staring at one another. And then I was alone again, back in the hall, surrounded by countless doors. Only one was still open. The plaque read, "Tomorrow." And for the first time since this began, I wasn't sure if I wanted to see what was behind it.
The hall had gone silent. No footsteps, no echoes, only the faint hum that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. That single open door marked "Tomorrow" pulsed faintly with a light that wasn't steady, as if the door itself was breathing. I took a slow step forward, and the floorboards whispered beneath my feet, like wood remembering the weight of someone long gone.
Every instinct told me not to open it, but curiosity is louder than fear. I reached for the doorknob. It felt warm, alive. The moment I touched it, a sound rippled through the hall. A whisper, my voice again, layered hundreds of times, overlapping in strange harmonies. Each voice said the same word, wait. But I didn't. The door opened to a blinding white light, soft and endless, as if the world had been erased and rewritten in mist. And then it shifted.
The white faded into color. I was standing in a room that looked exactly like mine. The bed, the desk, the unwashed mug, everything was the same, except for one thing. On the floor, by the wall, stood the wardrobe. The same wardrobe I had found in the other world. Only now it was open. Inside were clothes I didn't recognize, a coat I'd never owned, shoes that didn't fit me, a scarf that smelled faintly of rain and smoke. But behind the clothes, something moved. A flicker of light, like a candle struggling in the dark, and then a figure. Not me. Not exactly. It was her. The same woman from years ago, the one who had left. But her eyes weren't the same. They were calm, distant, as if she had been waiting here for a very long time. "You finally came," she said softly. Her voice wasn't a sound, it was a memory, a feeling.
"I don't understand," I whispered. She smiled, but it wasn't joy. It was something sadder, deeper. "This is where everything you never said lives. Every apology you rehearsed and never gave. Every moment you promised yourself would be different. Tomorrow." I looked around. The room was starting to fill with faint echoes. Dozens of tiny versions of that word, tomorrow, hanging in the air like invisible threads. "Why are you showing me this?" I asked again. "Because," she said, stepping closer, "you've spent your life waiting for the right moment, but the moment never waits for you." She reached toward me. Her hand passed right through mine, and suddenly every door in the hall slammed shut at once. A single word echoed through the emptiness. "Choose."
The wardrobe glowed brighter. Behind her, a second door appeared. Dark, shifting, humming softly. One led to memory, the other to something unknown. She looked at me one last time. "If you open the wrong one," she whispered, "you might never find your way back." And before I could ask which was which, the light vanished, and I was standing in front of both doors, alone. The air around me felt heavy, like the moment before thunder. Two doors stood before me, one glowing softly with a pale golden hue, the other absorbing the light around it, dark and quiet like deep water. Both hummed faintly, pulsing with something alive. Neither felt safe, neither felt wrong. My heartbeat became the only rhythm I could hear. And then the whispering began again. From the golden door, soft voices, familiar, comforting. They sounded like laughter, warmth, the feeling of a morning that never ended. From the dark door, silence. But it wasn't empty. It listened. I closed my eyes. The floor seemed to sway beneath my feet as I took a hesitant step forward. Every instinct screamed to choose the light. But there was something about that silence, something that called to me. I touched the dark door. Cold rushed up my arm like a breath from the ocean floor. And then I heard a single heartbeat, not mine.
The door opened. Darkness swallowed everything. Not empty, but dense, like I was walking through time itself, slow and syrup thick. And then I saw it. An infinite corridor mirrored on every side. Wardrobes, thousands of them, maybe millions, each one identical, each one humming faintly, alive. As I stepped forward, the reflections shifted. In every mirror, a different version of me. Some older, some younger, some smiling, some broken. And in one reflection, I saw something that made me stop breathing. I saw myself standing inside one of the wardrobes, pounding at the door, screaming silently for help.
I turned, horrified, and saw the same image behind me. Then again, and again, every reflection now showed the same thing. Me, trapped inside, desperate to get out. A quiet panic began to rise in my chest. My footsteps quickened. Each wardrobe I passed vibrated faintly, as if something inside was moving. Then, one of them opened, just a crack. A sliver of dim light slipped out, illuminating dust in the air, and through that narrow gap, a hand reached out. It was my hand, cold, trembling, grasping at nothing. I stepped back, but the hand followed, pushing the door wider until half my face appeared in the opening, eyes wide, lips moving, whispering words I couldn't hear. The air began to hum louder, the walls pulsing like a living heartbeat. Every wardrobe around me began to open. Hundreds of versions of myself staring out, each mouthing something silently. Each face filled with fear, regret, or sorrow. And in that moment, a realization hit me like lightning through the dark. Every door I ever avoided, every choice I never made, every life I never lived, they all ended up here. This wasn't a dream. It was a collection of everything I never became. Then the whispering stopped all at once. The silence was deafening. And from somewhere deep inside the corridor, a voice, low, steady, and far too familiar, spoke through the stillness.
"You've opened the wrong door."
The words echoed softly, but they carried weight, like a verdict whispered through the walls of time. My breath caught in my throat. That voice, it wasn't strange. It was mine. "Who's there?" I said, but the sound came out thin, swallowed by the humming air. Silence. Then, faintly, footsteps, slow, careful. Somewhere far down the corridor, between the endless rows of wardrobes, a figure was walking toward me. The light flickered as they came closer, and the reflection on every mirror shifted, each one now showing the same figure walking in perfect unison from every direction. When I finally saw their face, my stomach turned. It was me, but older, much older. Hair streaked with silver, eyes calm but heavy with something I couldn't name. He looked tired, not in body, but in soul.
"I told you not to open it," he said, voice low but steady. "I didn't know there were rules," I replied. "There always are," he said. "You just don't remember them yet." He stepped closer. The air seemed to ripple around him, like heat, but colder, more deliberate. Every mirrored version of me froze, as if the corridor itself waited for what he would say next. "What is this place?" I asked. He smiled faintly, though it wasn't warmth. It was sorrow. "This," he said, gesturing around him, "is the space between every version of yourself. Every decision that changed who you could have been. Every path that branched and was forgotten." I looked around, the rows of wardrobes stretching endlessly into the dark. "Each one is me?" He nodded. "A life you started, but never finished." The words sat heavy in the air.
I walked to one wardrobe and placed my hand on it. The surface pulsed softly under my fingers like a heartbeat. Inside, I could feel motion, the faint echo of another me still living that path. "What happens if I open one?" I asked quietly. His eyes sharpened. "You don't. None of them are yours anymore. But if they're all me, then—" He interrupted. "They were, but you chose differently. You moved on, and once you do, the doors close forever." Something in his tone sent a chill through me. I could hear regret in it, the kind that comes from too much knowledge. I looked at him closely. "So which one are you?" He smiled again, and for the first time, I saw fear in his eyes. "I'm the one who stayed." The corridor darkened slightly, the mirrors now reflecting only the two of us. The hum in the air deepened, a vibration I could feel in my bones. "Why did you stay?" I asked. He hesitated. "Because someone has to guard the doors. Someone has to remember what happens when one of us opens the wrong one.
And then he looked straight at me. Really looked. "You were dreaming, weren't you?" he asked softly. "Yes," I said. "At least, I think I was." He nodded slowly. "Then you need to wake up before it's too late." The lights flickered again. Somewhere behind us, several wardrobes began to rattle violently, their doors straining against invisible hands. "What's happening?" I shouted over the rising noise. He stepped forward, gripping my shoulder. His touch was ice. "You've been here too long. If you don't leave now, you'll start to remember every version, and once that happens..." His voice trailed off as the wardrobes burst open one by one. From each, versions of me began stepping out, their eyes wide, desperate, pleading. The sound of 1,000 heartbeats filled the corridor. "You'll never find your way back."
The floor beneath me trembled, as though the entire place had begun to breathe. Every wardrobe door hung open now, revealing endless reflections of me, each one slightly wrong. One wore a tattered suit and a hollow stare. Another's hands were stained with something dark. One version smiled, but it was too wide, too still. They began to whisper, all of them. My own voice multiplied into 1,000 tones, pleading, accusing, terrified. "Don't leave us. You forgot. You promised you wouldn't come back." I pressed my palms against my ears, but the sound wasn't outside anymore. It was inside my skull. The older version of me, the one who claimed to guard the doors, raised his hand. Instantly, the whispers softened, though they didn't stop. "They're echoes," he said. "Fragments of what you were, trying to be remembered." His face was pale under the flickering light. "If you listen too long, you'll forget who you are now." My voice shook. "Why did you bring me here?" "I didn't," he said quietly. "You came back on your own."
The words froze me in place. I looked around at the wardrobes, each one humming like a living thing. How could I come back if I didn't even know this place existed? He looked at me with something like pity. "Because deep down, we all return to the choices we regret the most." Something about his words hit too close. I tried to remember what I had been doing before all this, before the door, before the hum, before the dream. But every time I reached for the memory, it slid away like mist in sunlight. The older me began walking, motioning for me to follow. We passed rows of mirrors showing different lives, one where I stood on a stage beneath bright lights, one where I held a child's hand in the rain, one where I sat alone at a desk, writing endlessly into the night. "Every reflection," he said, "is a moment you abandoned. Each door, a life you almost lived."
We stopped in front of a wardrobe that glowed faintly from within. The air here was warmer, softer. He whispered, "This one was your happiest." I hesitated, feeling drawn toward it. A pulse beneath the surface, rhythmic, comforting. Through the crack in the door, I could almost hear laughter. My laughter. I reached out. The older me grabbed my wrist. "No," he whispered. His grip was trembling. "You can't open it." "Not yet." I asked, "Why not?" He answered, "Because once you remember what you lost, you'll never want to leave again." The words struck deep, their weight heavier than the silence that followed. He slowly released my wrist, looking at me with something close to grief. He said softly, "You were never supposed to wake up in the middle of the dream." That's how it starts unraveling. And then the lights began to flicker again. But this time, it wasn't the corridor that was changing. It was me.
My reflection in every mirror started to move on its own, slower, delayed. One blinked after I did. Another turned its head slightly, eyes following mine with a delay that made my skin crawl. Then, one of them smiled. Only one, and I hadn't. I took a step back. The smile in the reflection grew wider, cracks forming at the corners of its mouth like lines of light. "Why is it smiling?" I whispered. The older version of me looked toward the mirror, and for the first time his composure cracked. He took a slow breath and said, almost to himself, "Because one of us remembers what really happened." Then, before I could speak, the smiling reflection reached out, and its hand pressed against the other side of the glass. The sound of shattering silence filled the corridor.
The mirror surface rippled like water. Where my reflection's hand had touched, cracks spread outward in slow motion. Thin, glowing veins of light crawling across the glass. The older version of me stepped backward, eyes wide. "Don't move," he whispered. But I couldn't listen. I was transfixed. The cracks pulsed, the light growing brighter until it swallowed the frame completely. Then silence. And in the silence, I heard breathing. Not mine, not his. Something else. From the fractured surface, a figure began to push through. Not glass breaking, but reality folding. It was me again. Same face, same eyes. But the expression was wrong. The other me looked peaceful. Too peaceful. It smiled. The same slow, impossible smile that had haunted the reflection before. "Finally," it said, voice calm, like a sigh of relief. "You opened the right door." The older version of me raised his hand as though to speak, but no words came out. He looked terrified, and that somehow made me even more afraid. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice trembling. "Who are you?" The other me tilted its head.
I'm the one who stopped dreaming. Its tone was soft, compassionate, like someone explaining something to a child. You've been wandering through all these doors, trying to find which life was yours. But this is all of them. Every choice you made, every one you didn't. And you kept coming back, thinking one of them would feel right again.
The older version of me spoke then, his voice sharp with panic. Don't listen to it. That's not you. It's what the wardrobe becomes when you stay too long. The peaceful one smiled again. He's afraid. He doesn't want you to remember what you did. Stop, the older one said, stepping between us. You're not supposed to. Before he could finish, the air around us fractured like glass, and the older me was gone. No sound, no light, just gone. The peaceful version looked at me, still smiling. He served his purpose. He was only there to guide you until you were ready. Ready for what? To wake up. My stomach turned. Wake up? I am awake. It shook its head. No, you've been asleep for a very long time.
The corridor began to distort. Walls stretching, doors melting into shadows. I could feel the ground bending, as though gravity itself was uncertain. Every wardrobe door started to hum again, that same low, endless note, like the sound of something ancient stirring. Where am I? I whispered. The peaceful one stepped closer. It said, "You built this place, not for clothes, not for dreams, for memories." It reached out its hand toward me. Every time you couldn't face the truth, you locked another part of it behind a door. My heart raced. What truth? It smiled again, gently, sadly. You're not dreaming about being God. You're dreaming about playing God. The lights above us flickered violently now. My mind flashed images I couldn't fully grasp. A laboratory, machines humming, people in beds, hundreds of them, their eyes closed, wires connecting their heads to glowing screens. A name tag on a coat, Dr. Elias Ward. My breath caught. That was my name. The peaceful one leaned close, its voice almost a whisper. You tried to create a perfect world for the mind, infinite lives, infinite choices, the infinite wardrobe. I stumbled backward. No, it continued softly. You tested it yourself first, but the system never let you go. The corridor began collapsing around us, doors falling into a void of white light. I tried to run, but every step felt heavier, slower, like moving through liquid. Stop fighting, the other me said gently. You've been here for years. It's time to accept it.
And then I saw the last wardrobe, the glowing one, the one he told me never to open. It stood untouched amid the chaos, humming softly like a heartbeat. I turned toward it. The peaceful one's smile faltered. "It's don't," it said, its calm tone breaking for the first time. "That one isn't yours anymore." But I didn't stop. I reached for the handle. The hum grew louder until it was all I could hear. Then I opened the door.
White light poured out from the wardrobe, not blinding, but warm, like sunlight through water. For the first time, I didn't feel afraid. I felt weightless. Behind me, the peaceful version of myself shouted something, but his voice was fading, distant, like an echo at the bottom of a deep tunnel. I stepped forward. The world around me dissolved into pure brilliance. For a moment, there was no sound, no shape, no self, only awareness. And then, faintly, I heard it, the rhythmic hum of machines. When the light dimmed, I was lying on a metal table. My hands were covered in thin cables. Monitors blinked beside me, green lines tracing the pulse of a body that didn't feel like mine.
I turned my head and saw glass walls all around. Beyond them, rows of beds, each one occupied by someone asleep, faces peaceful, wires connecting their minds to flickering screens. The labels on each bed read, Subject 034, Subject 072, Subject 119, and beside mine, Dr. Elias Ward. It hit me then. The voice, the light, the corridors, none of it had been outside me. It was inside. A maze I'd built to trap myself in. I stood, weakly pulling at the cables. They came free with a faint hiss. An old terminal glowed beside the bed, its interface frozen mid-command. Infinite wardrobe project. Enter subjective reality loop. Confirm. The timestamp was from years ago. I looked around again. Dust covered the consoles. The air was still, heavy. No footsteps, no people, only silence, thick and absolute.
I staggered to a mirror mounted on the far wall, small, cracked. My reflection looked older, thinner, eyes sunken, skin pale. But it was me, not the reflections, not the peaceful version, just me. Then I noticed something, the faint shimmer behind my reflection, like a translucent second image. Another me, still standing in that endless corridor. He smiled sadly and mouthed words I couldn't hear. And I realized, maybe I hadn't escaped. Maybe this was just another door, another layer of the dream. I whispered, "Wake up." But nothing changed. The lights flickered once. On the terminal, new text appeared, slowly, letter by letter. "Would you like to create another world? My hand trembled above the keyboard. Part of me wanted to destroy it, to walk away, to finally end this. But another part, the same part that had built the infinite wardrobe, whispered that maybe this time I could make it right. I looked at the reflection one last time. He wasn't smiling anymore. He just stared, as if waiting for me to choose. I pressed one key. Enter. The hum began again. Soft, familiar, endless. And then everything faded until there was only the sound of a door slowly closing. What if I never woke up at all? When the hum faded, I found myself standing in a vast white expanse. No shadows, no sound, just endless stillness. It was neither hot nor cold, the kind of space where time didn't exist. Then, out of the silence, a faint whisper reached me. My own voice, not from around me, but through me. Elias, you have to remember why you started this. A single chair appeared ahead, and on it sat a woman. Her hair, silver white, drifted like smoke in the still air. Her eyes held that same strange calm, a mix of sorrow and understanding. I froze. "Who are you?" She smiled softly. "You called me here. I am what's left of your conscience." Her words felt like an echo I'd heard 1,000 times in dreams I'd long forgotten. Suddenly, I remembered the experiment. The infinite wardrobe wasn't built to explore alternate realities. It was designed to heal the mind. A machine to let patients confront the rooms of their own memories, to open, one by one, the doors they had locked away in pain.
But I'd gone too deep. I'd used it on myself, and I never came back. The woman stood and walked toward me. With each step, her body shimmered between form and light. "Elias," she said, "every door you opened wasn't a new world. It was an old memory. Each reflection was a choice you never made." I felt my throat tighten. "So all of it? The corridors, the shadows, the voices?" She nodded. "Fragments of you." I wanted to believe her, but the light began to shift, rippling gently, forming shapes again. Doors appeared all around us, hundreds of them, each one faintly glowing with a color of its own. "Where do these lead?" I whispered. "To the lives you've already lived, and the ones you might have." I stared at the doors, some radiating warmth, others shivering in cold hues of blue. Some called to me softly, like familiar lullabies. Others seemed to hum with danger, with the thrill of forgotten chaos. The woman stopped beside me, her voice almost a whisper. "You can walk through any of them. But if you do, you'll lose who you are now, again." I hesitated. "Then what happens if I stay?" She looked at me for a long time, and then, with a gentle smile, said, "Then you'll wake up." I turned back toward her, wanting to ask what she meant, but she was already fading. Her outline broke into light, scattering like dust through the air. And before I could move, the ground beneath me began to pulse like a living thing. Each door flickered one by one, their handles turning on their own. From behind them came whispers, voices of people I knew, lives I'd touched, regrets I'd buried, all calling me by name. The woman's voice echoed faintly through the bright air, a final whisper carried by light. "Choose wisely, Elias, before the doors choose for you."
Then every door swung open at once, flooding the world with colors, sounds, and fragments of 1,000 lives colliding into one. And I realized for the first time that being a god in your dreams wasn't about control. It was about understanding the infinite versions of yourself that you'd left behind. The hum returned, louder, surrounding everything. And then, silence again. Only one door remained open, and through it I could hear the faint sound of my own heartbeat.
The hum softened into a heartbeat, slow, heavy, real. For the first time in what felt like centuries, I could feel air fill my lungs, warm, almost human. The single open door ahead pulsed gently, as if it too were breathing. I stepped closer. Each movement felt slower, heavier, like walking underwater. The closer I came, the stronger the sound became, my heartbeat syncing with the pulse of the door. The white around me dimmed into a faint twilight, and shadows began to rise again. But these shadows were different. They weren't cold. They carried faces, memories. My mother's laughter, my first home, the friend I lost, the woman whose eyes still followed me through every version of my life. They didn't speak, they just looked at me, quietly waiting. I reached out to touch the doorknob. It was warm, vibrating slightly under my fingers.
Before I could turn it, a voice whispered behind me, not from the woman this time, but from myself. "You know what happens if you walk through there." I turned and saw me, another Elias, standing in the light. His face was calm, older, wiser somehow. He wasn't angry or afraid, just tired. He said, "I've walked through that door before. Every time you wake up somewhere new, but you always end up back here because you keep running from what's behind it." I stared at him,
What's behind it? He smiled, sad, knowing the truth. The light around us began to flicker, fading like a dying candle. He continued, "Every version of you thought the wardrobe was a mystery to solve, but it's not a puzzle. It's a mirror. It's showing you what you refuse to accept." The heartbeat grew louder, faster. The light pulsed in rhythm with it. I looked at the door again. Something inside me whispered, "Open it before it closes itself." The other Elias stepped closer, lowering his voice to a whisper. "If you open it this time, really open it, you won't come back." My throat tightened. "Then, where will I go?" He tilted his head slightly. "Home." The word felt foreign, heavy, beautiful. I looked at the door one last time, the pulse now beating like thunder. Then, slowly, I turned the handle. The light swallowed everything. It wasn't blinding. It was gentle, like dawn after 1,000 nights. And in that moment, every version of me, every echo, every shadow dissolved into light. I felt weightless, silent, free. But before the light could take me completely, a voice, soft and familiar, echoed faintly through it all. "Wake up, Elias. It's time to come back." The hum faded into the slow beep of a machine. And through the fog of consciousness, I felt the world return, one breath at a time. The infinite wardrobe was gone. The dreams were fading. But deep inside, behind the quiet rhythm of the beeping monitor, I could still hear it. The faint creak of a door slowly closing. Light. That was the first thing I saw when my eyes opened. Not the sharp light of the wardrobe, but the soft, imperfect glow of a hospital ceiling. The hum of machines, a quiet rhythm of beeps, the faint scent of antiseptic. I blinked slowly, trying to remember how to breathe. My chest ached as if I'd been holding my breath for years. Someone was sitting beside me, a woman, familiar, though I couldn't place her at first. When she noticed I was awake, her eyes widened. They were red, tired, and beautiful in the way only something real could be. "You're back," she whispered. "You were gone for so long." Her hand trembled slightly as she reached for mine. I didn't pull away. Her touch felt warm, human, grounding. I tried to speak, but the words came out broken. "How long?" She smiled faintly, though her voice wavered. "6 months. You've been in a coma since the accident." 6 months. The phrase floated in my mind like a leaf in still water. The wardrobe, the doors, the voices, the infinite reflections. All of it. 6 months of dreams or something else. I turned my head slowly toward the window. Outside, it was raining,
a slow, rhythmic drizzle that made. As the morning light spilled through the window, the wardrobe stood silently against the far wall, its doors perfectly closed, as if they had never moved at all. Ethan sat on the edge of his bed, fingers brushing the faint trace of dust that had settled on the handle. For a moment, he thought he heard the whisper again, that same voice from the other side, gentle and distant.
But when he leaned closer, there was nothing. Just his own reflection in the mirror of the wardrobe, pale, tired, and searching. He smiled faintly. Maybe it had all been a dream. Or maybe dreams were simply another kind of doorway, one that opened inward, not out. Outside, the world went on. Birds sang, cars passed, life continued. Yet, as he turned away, a single sound came from behind him, the soft creak of wood shifting ever so slightly. He didn't look back, because some doors, once opened, never really close.